there is this attempt by a lot of the male chefs to separate themselves from their memories of the feminine energy of food.
Asma Khan, welcome to what we're calling the Speakeasy. And we're calling it a Speakeasy because we're conjuring thoughts of the 1930s, perhaps between the wars, feeling a little bit anxious about the world, but needing to have safe spaces for surreptitious conversation and so on. So that's why we've called these podcasts the Speakeasy. But it is really wonderful to have you here. You were born like me in 1969, but whilst I was born in June in London, you being much younger were born in July.
By an entire month.
In Kolkata.
Yes.
Do you want to say just a little bit about your family background? Because I think it's very, very important to your life and your work.
Yes. I grew up in Calcutta. I was born there. And I lived my most formative years in Calcutta, even though we traveled to Hyderabad and Madras. It was called Madras there, Chennai now. My father and mother both came from royal families, but we lived this very, very simple life in a small flat in Calcutta where every morning I would hear the tram going past. And it was a really beautiful time to be in Calcutta. And now when I look back, I think that was very, very influential for me and then my father. And I was very aware of my royal heritage, but I was too embarrassed to talk about it in school. So a lot of people discovered only on Netflix that I had a palace and a fortress and that I was a princess, which is really funny. But I think this comes from my father, who was very active with trade unions. He worked in a factory at a very volatile a time in Bengal when many factories there was lockdown, and they would lock out there was lockout. And in the lockout, these were daily wages, they were just outside. And my father would turn up in this kind of heat and stand at the gates. And everybody knew he was this prince. He was an engineer, he worked in a factory, and he would stand there with his kind of huge frame, big mustaches, till they let the workers in. And it was this kind of, almost many layers coming through. And so my family background, I should have been this very privileged, spoiled, princess-like person because of the kind of family I came from. But my parents were very different. It was a nuclear family. We didn't live in the fortress and the palace. We didn't live with extended relatives in this kind of huge family clan scenario. My father, very, very, very gentle soul, but deeply committed to equality. My mother was the first woman in her family who worked. She set up a catering business. And so all of this really it was a kind of upbringing like no other.
It's amazing. I mean, in particular, for them to be of such privilege, and your father in particular, to have this royal lineage and then become a trade union organizer. Did he ever explain that to you?
Yes. I've asked him often because he has this deep sense of justice. He would always tell me that this is for history, because you understand that what is legal today, people have fought and given up their lives. And I have not read Ibn Battuta. I have not read a lot of books. My father would narrate by memory passages from it. He always spoke about, how important it was to shake the world gently, to stand up for justice and for equality. And I think that we were immersed in these stories of people who stood up. Saladin, literally, and it was just an incredible time in our lives, somewhat forced because of long power cuts.
Yeah.
There was no electricity all night. after a while, it got so hot and humid, we all got out of bed and then we sat in an open space with my father having this old palm leaf fan. The three of us would sit down. There was one candle. My father, there's a lot of, my father has these really strange fingers. He had a sixth finger. He could make all these characters on the shadow on the walls. And then there was story time till early morning. Then
So proper old school storytelling.
Yes.
That's the tradition.
That is just
And look,
what a privilege.
You mentioned at least a couple of times in the last few minutes concepts of justice and equality. Long before you became a chef, and a world-renowned chef as you now are, you were a constitutional lawyer.
Yes.
So that's quite a. I mean, so it's something else we have in common. But what was the plan there? Were you thinking of practicing, or were you thinking of entering the academy? You have a PhD from King's here in London in constitutional law.
I initially wanted to be a criminal barrister.
Okay.
So my second year in law school, I signed up for these mini pupilages. I will never forget. This was the probably third or fourth one I did. A very gentle person took me aside, a very experienced barrister who I will not name. And he said something that shook my world. And I realized one thing, that I'm running this race differently. Because he told me, you're interested in being a criminal barrister, you have no future. And then he said, because most likely you're going to have to represent someone who looks like you. They don't want someone like you to represent them. They would prefer someone like me, a white man, to represent them. And he said, I see in you a fire and a flame, and it's going to be wasted if you try to practice, you will fail. But that wasn't the reason why I didn't follow the route that I had planned to go to Middle Temple, qualify as a barrister. I just got interested in cooking.
Right.
And I knew this was my great secret, because if I'd admitted this to anyone, they would have first thought I was copying out and not finishing my PhD. And the other thing is that I felt this deep sense of injustice, because every time people talked about food, every time I sat in our South Asian gatherings, I saw the women serving roti. And the head of the table, the men and the boys ate first. No one checked whether there was enough food left for the women. And there was just so much that made me feel this is not right. There is inequality. I guess because of the upbringing I had. But I didn't even know what bothered me. Lots of things bothered me, but I didn't know what the solution was. And I realized one thing, that women are marginalized. And food is being used. Our food is taken.
Absolutely. I always say to people, welcome to the patriarchy. Have you dined with us before? My name's Shami. I'll be your server this evening. Let me tell you about the specials. And I was thinking that when you told the story of your mini pupil master and that very chilling, almost warning to you.
Yes, but the thing is that he was trying to be kind. And he was, honest. I would have still gone on, but I'd already picked up that there's a two-tier system here.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, look, you're irrepressible. And so this yearning for justice and equality was always going to bubble to the surface, whichever particular cooking pot it was that you were going to choose. So tell me about the beginnings of your career as a chef.
I started my food business. I registered it online with the council the night I passed my PhD viva. I think that because I looked like I was going to cry and pass out at the same time, they very kindly told me that I'd passed. And most of my corrections were typos. I was just amazed. I got so many people to read my PhD. There were like 18 pages of typos.
What was the precise sort of area that you...
So it's looking at the relationship of church and state, but
Right.
in particular the role of the ecclesiastical committee, which is a joint committee of the House of Commons and House of Lords, and how they made laws for the Church of England. It was a very technical
Yeah,
PhD,
very
specific, very focused. The political chapter was the beginning and the end. I explained historically how Parliament became involved in church matters, explaining the Reformation, all the legislation, and the fact that people were in Parliament now making laws because they were given the assets that was taken away from the Catholic Church. So huge amounts of property were given to them. So this shift, so it was basically how, you do not have, legislature involved in religious things unless you're, in Iran. This is a theocracy. But what was set up was a fascinating version of that,
Yes.
where church and state, head of church and head of state was the same person. And this kind of, the settlement, the Reformation settlement was just fascinating. So I went through my first degree is in history. So I explained the historical concept, how we reached this stage. And then I went through, there are certain, measures, as they call them, that went through Parliament, explaining how it worked.
And of course, you published many cookery books, but maybe one day you should return to your PhD and maybe publish a version of it as a non-fiction trade book. I think it would be fascinating, maybe with some new perspectives.
Yes.
On, well, I mean, if you're talking about the struggle for religious freedom in the UK being inseparable from the development of democracy, there would be contemporary takes on that even now. No,
absolutely. I've always, of course,
I should be your agent. I should be your agent. We won't tell your agent, but we'll scratch that so the agent doesn't feel alarmed.
I have no agent.
You have no agent.
I have never had an agent. I've had an agent very briefly with my in cookbooks, but I don't have an agent for my work, for my anything else I do. I always feel that I understand intuitively.
You're your own best advocate.
Yes, and I just think that, I don't need someone else to tell my story. This is what happens to too many of us. We allow other people to censor us and to direct us and guide us. And, I'm so glad. I could have opened, Darjeeling Express or taken it to the moon after Chef's Table. Everybody came to me saying, oh, we can invest in you, venture capitalist money, everything that, I'd never had before. I pushed back and didn't take any of this because I wanted to stay so small that my impact would be big.
Well, and goodness me, it worked, didn't it? I mean, I have to say, Asma, that episode of Chef's Table, and you, of course, were the first British chef to feature in that beautiful documentary. I mean, that, the sumptuous production values that, goodness me, Netflix, they really know how to make TV, don't they? I mean, what a wonderful, moving, delicious, sumptuous episode that is. And again, your values, geography, history, politics, feminism, it's all in there. Along with the wonderful cooking.
And I'm so grateful I got an opportunity. The first thing I requested is that do not script me. And they were great. And the other thing was show my team. And there was silence. I thought I dropped out of the call, but they said not a single chef till then. And since me, asked to show their team.
Right.
And Abu, my father, would always tell me, your power comes from your team.
Well, so that's the politics and the values again, isn't it? And your team are all women.
Yes.
So this is the opposite of welcome to the patriarchy. I'm not saying it's the matriarchy, but it's very collectivist.
Yeah.
It's very sisterly. It's very mutually supportive, and that comes through not just in Chef's Table, but the subsequent many episodes of your food program that you've done for the Food Network as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about your team?
My team, I don't know. I mean, I don't know life without them because they were there from the first day the Darjeeling Express journey started. I registered the company, my first supper club at home, they were all there. The 3 grandmothers that we have today, one of them has a granddaughter in her late 30s. We all began together. I do not know what Darjeeling Express is on it without them. They are I am standing on the shoulders of giants. They are everything. They're the beating heart of this business. And I am in awe of their resilience, their commitment, and their solidarity. I don't think I could have succeeded on my own. I think my story would have been very different if I was not part of this collective.
It's a very, very different leadership model from that which we see from very, very famous celebrity chefs, and the whole kind of cult of the male chef in particular, the shouting, the swearing, the tough, rather macho leadership style that we associate with fancy cooking. And, you know, as the BBC have now found, to their embarrassment, to national embarrassment, actually, your kitchen is a real antidote to that.
Yes, and I think that I have a theory, and I could be wrong, but this is just my personal feeling. There is this attempt by a lot of the male chefs to separate themselves from their memories of the feminine energy of food, from the dinner ladies who are older grandmothers, to their mothers and grandmothers, to seeing their mother washing up. Maybe they are lucky that they had fathers involved in things, but that's not how it works. And I think to prove that this is a masculine, we are like as if we are all in mortal combat. We're in this video game. We are tattooed and we're muscular and we are pierced and we're shouty and aggressive. It was almost as if they want to bury the absolute feminine side of how they know this is the food of their memories. To separate themselves from the dinner ladies, from their grandmothers. So many chefs are here. When they're interviewed, they say, who's the best chef? Many of them say, my mother or grandmother. No one looks like your mother or grandmother in your kitchen.
No.
You have no respect for women. You have no respect for older women. If you go into any of these kitchens, do you see an older woman? I started at 45. The average age of woman cooking in my kitchen is 50. I have 3 grandmothers. And we are a powerhouse.
Absolutely.
We absolutely rock it. And so the strength of us, I won't name him, but everyone knows because I wrote an article in a newspaper about it. But a very, very prominent British chef said that he would not hire women because when they got pregnant, they could not lift pots. And I wrote, what is your kitchen like that your team are lifting heavy pots the whole day? It really frightens me. What are you cooking? You know, this is the reason why they gave this reason that we don't want women because then they get pregnant, they can't carry pots. Then hire older women. Do they ever hire? The ageism, the misogyny.
Yes.
And this is not just in restaurants.
No.
It's very clear. It's in food media as well. This kind of, we've had chefs who, they thought this was really funny to have him on TV naked with just a apron on. They've allowed so much of really poor quality, conversations, and they've all become heroes. They become hero and they're obnoxious. They're absolutely obnoxious.
And it's the opposite of what food is all about, which
Yes.
is about nurturing and tenderness and hospitality and kindness, and it's very strange. I
And we
agree.
have allowed this to happen.
I think you need a shrink, not a lawyer, to work this out. But you seem to have quite a good analysis of it.
No, but there is an attempt to separate women and female force in hospitality. I have always said this. The way that the structure is set up of the shifts, everybody comes in for a double shift. A double shift in this country, unless it's like summer, you leave when it's dark, you come back after 11 o'clock. No wonder all these men who are working are psychotic because they are in these, especially in central London, the kitchens tend to be in the basement because of the rent. You are in an artificially lit environment with a constant sound, which can really be difficult of the extractor. And then you are going out for these quick, breaks to have cigarettes. The substance abuse no one is talking about.
Right.
The alcoholism, the drug use in kitchens that are tense is huge. No one is discussing this. No one is discussing that why do we have to have a double shift? Often these very fine dining posh restaurants have a different menu for lunch and dinner.
Right.
Why cannot you have a shift for women, or they can choose which shift they come in? Because a double shift, it's not just women who have to give up their entire life. Normal men,
Yeah.
men who want to sing in the choir, who want to play football, who want to hang out with their friends, who want to even spend time with their kids. These are not the people who will survive in hospitality.
Yeah.
Because if you have to go in, and you have to go in every Friday and Saturday, that's when it's busy. I am now reached that point where I have forgiven myself. Often people ask me this question: how do you balance being a mother and a busy chef? I said, there's no word called balance. I failed. I have failed as a mother. I saw my children sleeping when I came back. I didn't have a single meal with them on the weekend. I could not go to any of their events. I could struggle and go to parent-teachers meeting. And I have learned to accept this. I hope they will forgive me too. I am saying this not because I want anyone to feel bad for me, because women hesitate to accept this.
I'm sure they're very proud of you.
They are proud of me, I hope. But so many women carry the guilt from the work to the home, from the home to the work. In both spaces, you feel inadequate. You feel you're failing. And I don't see this with men. This is sucking the oxygen out of us.
Yeah.
Please don't do this. Forgive yourself and understand there is no word called balance. There's no work-life balance for some of us. When we are sole entrepreneurs, when we're in politics, when we are a trade unionist, when you are working in a factory, whatever you're doing, you will always struggle to find that perfect balance between what you want to do and what you feel you're being forced to do. And I think the only way out is to forgive yourself, to be kind, to give yourself that space, to know that there will be a day when your children will say, this is my mother, this is her legacy. You may not live to see that. I always tell especially I tell women this: go sow a harvest you will not reap. Go put the seeds into the ground and water it and nourish
Goodness
it.
me, Asma! I want you to be Prime Minister. You're not so much a celebrity chef as a revolutionary chef, I think. Can I ask about the Second Daughters Fund?
Yes, I'm a second daughter, and I always knew I was not wanted. The extended family, would always make me feel not welcome.
And not your parents?
Not my parents. My mother did cry when I was born, but my mother's one of 5 daughters.
Right.
She was told by her mother, make sure you do not have a daughter, because another aunt before had just had a daughter. And my mother, it's overwhelming. She felt like she'd let everybody down. They definitely made her feel that she'd let everybody down. But after that, my mother and father really loved me. And I never understood. I figured this out much later. 3.5 years later, after I was born, my brother was born. That is the royal heir to the family. There was no celebration. My mother did nothing that was required from her to celebrate the birth of a boy. 0. And I remember standing outside barefoot, outside the house. And people were coming and saying, oh, your mother's in hospital. What happened? I said, I had a boy. They said, no, where's the celebration? There's no fireworks, there's no light. We haven't been given sweets. My mother gave nothing. My mother just ignored it. And at that time, I remember when I went to the hospital, my father was so kind to me. He had gave me, I'll never forget this. I was 3.5. He gave me a pomegranate because I used to like jumping and, I was very active as a tomboy. So he gave me that pomegranate and said, this is your gift because you got a brother. But because I was holding the pomegranate, I could do very little damage to my mother and the baby and everything. And I later on thought, this is just a
very symbolic, the
Yeah.
pomegranate.
Yes. And I never seen a pomegranate in my life before. And I was so, in awe of this fruit. And then my father came home, and I remember this. He told me all these stories from the Arabian Nights and the pomegranate and this kind of. I felt like I was, and then there was this boy born, and he came home, but my father continued to tell me the stories from Arabian Nights. I remember that so clearly. So my parents were very, very, they treated us very equally. But the extended family always made me feel like the spare. They made me feel unwanted. And it's a double whammy, because not only was I the second daughter, I was the unattractive daughter. My family, extended family, would always discuss how fat I was, how dark I was. I loved playing cricket the whole day on the street. They would tell me no one's going to marry you because you are ugly, and it's really, you're not attractive. Also, I hated wearing, very traditional clothes, because they got stuck
Got in the way of your cricket and your running around.
So my mother was very sweet to me. She would not let me. I wore a lot of cotton. I didn't wear silks and chiffons. My sister did. And my sister was beautiful, beautiful. She still looks much younger than me. She had this beautiful hair, and she was this princess. Everybody loved her. But I learned a very important lesson. I was very young. I was 5. My sister loved me. And when people were being really cruel to me and laughing at me, but I learned not to cry in front of people when in my family who were mean to me. My sister would hold my hand and said, "You are the warrior princess, Asma. The world will know your name. You are the true warrior, and you are the most beautiful. You are someone everybody will know about." And I realized at a very young age, when women stand by women, this is what I said in Netflix as well, it changes everything.
I love your twist, by the way, on the Madeleine Albright, the famous Madeleine Albright quote about, special place in hell for women who don't support other women. In your special place in hell, there's a tandoor,
and there's chili paste,
and there's chili paste, and there's hot ghee,
yeah.
And it's really. It's X-rated. It's really not before the watershed, the kind of special place in hell that you describe. But the foundation that you set up for second daughters,
it is essentially to help second daughters. You cannot go into families. I came from so-called, privileged, educated family. Their attitude towards girls belongs to the dark ages.
Right.
So you can't go into families and try and check, because the village will exclude you, the town will exclude you. So what I've done, I've used the Second Daughters Foundation to ensure that girls are sent to school, because the ones who are not sent to school are the second daughters. They educate the first one. The second daughter end up looking after the younger siblings, and very seriously, in rural India, they're the ones who go to get water. And if she's getting water the whole day for the house, how is she going to be educated? And she's a mouth to feed, and they are the ones also who are married off early,
right?
And they are disposed of, and often they are sold as well in very impoverished communities. So I fund schools where they are given a midday meal, which I pay for, but extra takeaway. And that's how these girls are coming into school. We can't
So
hold on to
important.
them beyond, grade 5. We do lose them.
School meals are so important, whether in India or whether even in the UK,
They're critical.
right?
They're critical.
Even in the UK, we're still having this debate. And mercifully, the current government is expanding free school meals. I personally would like to see universal free school meals for everyone in compulsory education. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? We don't charge children for the light and the heat and the shelter and the security. Totally inspirational, Asma. So what I wanted to suggest to you is that your feminism has a serious economic dimension. It isn't just identity politics. It isn't bourgeois feminism. It has that very economic, political context to it. And I think that runs through the story of food more generally, doesn't it?
Yes, and one of the problems that a lot of women of every culture have, somehow we're not supposed to talk about money. When the families would discuss property matters, because the girls would not inherit property, they were not part of the conversation. We give our daughters gold bangles, so that they can sell the gold in difficult times.
Right.
We do not teach them how to manage money. And this is our problem, that there's shame linked to borrowing money outside the family. There is shame about, if a lot of families take it personally. In India recently, there could be different reasons, but you had a father who shot his very successful daughter, who was a tennis player, because people would laugh at him and say, you're living off the money of your daughter. But there was also other issues about, things that he didn't approve of in her personal life. But the fact that people feel they can do this to their daughters, this honor killing, there is no honor in it, of course. It is very frightening. Something just happened recently in Balochistan. It's happening all the time. And we are not encouraged to be financially independent. We do not inherit the farm. We do not inherit the family property.
Yeah.
Girls are excluded from, so much of the assets of families that almost it's like a dependency that we need to talk about rights with money. And money is a huge thing. And I always say, women's food is accepted when it's free. No one wants to pay us for our roti.
Exactly. I mean, and I have to say, obviously we're having this conversation very specifically about values and politics and activism, but I find that even when I'm watching your cooking programs, these values just simmer away and bubble away and rise to the top of the pot.
Yes.
And there's this wonderful part of your latest Food Network series when you're talking about the delicious dessert, carrot halva.
Yes.
And you say this is a very traditional dish. It's very much enjoyed. It's served at weddings. It's a real delicacy. But so many men think that it's cheap.
Yes.
Because the carrots are cheap, the raw ingredients are cheap, but nobody is counting the cost of women's labour. It's a very time-consuming dish to make. And you articulate this very clearly in What's a Cooking Show?
Yes, because I cannot be on a platform. I cannot be in this, be on television or, even speaking to you or anything, because what drives me is this sense of injustice. And I will use every platform within reason to talk about these things, because I've always had this thing. My father would always say, there's a little arrow that you can throw. It's invisible into the heart of the person you're speaking to. And it'll sit there and simmer, and it'll become the light, because they will understand everything that you said.
So this is what you call, this is how you refer to shaking the world gently.
Yes.
So that this is, you remind me of a mother in England or anywhere in the West who's trying to get her children to eat vegetables, but she has to hide them in the pasta sauce, right? So you're hiding the politics in the pasta sauce or in the curry.
Yes, and the thing is that I'm pragmatic enough to understand that people have different views, and me being someone shrill and shrieky and making a point about politics, I will have achieved nothing, because that person is not going to change their mind. But in this soft, invisible arrow that I can pierce through their soul, and they understand, they start questioning little things. And that for me is what I try to do. So yes, I'm hiding the vegetables in the pasta, but I'm also, in a way, using the position that I have to also talk about race. Because it's not just the politics and it's not just female. I run a different race from a white man in my business, but I also run a different race from a white woman.
Yeah.
There is cultural baggage which I carry, but not as a burden on my back, but as a badge of honor.
So this is what the youngsters now called call intersectional feminism, but I think it's very traditional feminism. It's more Sylvia Pankhurst than Emmeline and Christabel.
Yes.
And another famous second daughter, of course.
Yes, yes.
There's a through line here. So when I'm so glad you brought up race, because I was kind of going to tentatively go there in that sort of very English way. When I eat your food, when I look at your menu, your beautiful menus, and I watch your cooking program, obviously, you know, the Bengali Calcutta nature of it means a lot to me. My parents aren't around anymore, but so many of those dishes really resonate with me, and I can't tell you the gift when your parents aren't around of being able to eat something that is very, very closely reminiscent of your parents' food. It's a transformative experience, I have to tell you. But I'm also reminded of the melting pot and the different cultures that enter into your menu and your kitchen, certainly from different religious traditions, but also different, I mean, people, you know, will think I'm going to Asma Khan's Indian restaurant, but we've got Chinese influences in some of these dishes. We've got dishes that I would think of as more from the Muslim tradition, and dishes that are from other traditions of the subcontinent as well. Do you want to say a little more about that?
Yes, it is. I think that, you know, unless you're Elon Musk, who thinks that they've done the electric car on their own and are solely responsible for everything, you must reflect your team in whatever product that you have. So I have a large team of Nepali women. We have momos.
Yep.
Momos is also something that is very Calcutta. The kosha mangsho is more a Hindu Bengali thing.
Right.
And I'm Muslim. And we have different things. And there are times when we have, in the dessert, you know, we've got papa doi, which is mishti doi. Again, a very Bengali dessert. But
Delicious.
sometimes I swap
Delicious.
it and I have Srikhand. I have 5 Gujarati women working for me. Srikhand is a very Gujarati dessert. You should see the smiles when they see their dessert being eaten by, it's an open kitchen.
Right.
And nothing that I can do for them can bring them that joy, because their grandmother's dish is being eaten by all these people, and they're nodding to them, and it's such
You see, that is the India that I admire and respect, not something polarized, not something pure, not something with one religion or tradition or language set above others. And that's very much, I mean, you come from a Muslim tradition. My parents were born into Hindu families, but very ecumenical, very liberal. You know, I think I wish they were around to meet you, actually. I think I would be very proud to say this is my friend, Asma Khan.
Thank you.
And again, food is very political.
Food is very political, and in India, the caste system prevented you from eating with others. You couldn't share the same utensils. But if you were a lower caste person, your shadow could pollute the village well. There are evidence where people have been beaten to death because of something that they may or may not have eaten. And this impurity and purity has kept people. And I am convinced that one of the reasons why we haven't been able to come together and fight, you know, policies that we don't like, is because we are all deeply divided. And I know people would love to blame just the British for their divide and rule. They're huge culprits in this. But, you know, caste system goes back a long way.
Yes, absolutely.
And this idea that you eat separately, if my dream, I always think, is a table where everybody breaks bread together. This is not about peace. This is a shared moment. The common factor where you all eat together. You may not eat certain things. I have people who come to my restaurant who have dietary restrictions, who are vegan, who are vegetarian. I can still sit on the table with them and have this really meaningful conversation. We eat different things, but we eat together. This luxury has been removed from us because of all these divisions that are there historical. And I know people will turn around and say, oh, no, this is all changing. In the microscopic elite. And India lives in the villages. And in the villages, in rural India, in small town UP and small town in Punjab, you will still find all these biases about people living and thriving. This is why we are all, also our women are abandoned. The isolation when it comes to you eat separately, you feed people in your own family, this is a kind of private. If women got together, and what happens in other cultures, we don't have this idea of a village oven. Everybody doesn't turn up and, bake bread. Again, this is to do with our divisions and the fact that, really intrinsically in India, people didn't, bake bread together because of this whole thing of segregation.
It's a very, very classic way of segregating people, isn't it?
Yes.
Whether in apartheid South Africa or in Jim Crow, under Jim Crow in the US, segregate cafes, restaurants, schools, of course.
No, and in this country, even though there weren't signs, but people do remember no Irish, no dogs. And so separation of people because of who they are is deeply problematic. And I think that I have to say this, and I say this a lot in my restaurant and supper clubs, it is a privilege to eat. And to then resent someone who is eating, I can't understand how you can hate someone. They have the good fortune to eat, because we know at this time there are so many around who are not eating, who cannot eat. And you don't need to go too far into, rural South Asia to find families at the edge of hunger.
You can find that, I'm afraid, here in the UK,
Yes.
a quarter of the way into the 21st century. And when I was listening to you just now talking about the urban-rural distinction in India, you see that even in the UK. I mean, your wonderful restaurant is in the heart of the West End of London in Carnaby Street. As you say on the TV, a little bit of Kolkata in Carnaby Street. But I wonder about maybe one day a pop-up Darjeeling Express in some rural town.
And I would love that.
Or village in, I don't know, in Kent, or in perhaps a part of England or another part of the UK where things aren't as harmonious as we would like them to be. I think that would be a good TV show.
Yes.
The Darjeeling Express comes to town and pops up.
Now, that would be fun as well. I think food is the language of love. As a immigrant, as a Muslim immigrant, as someone who began a food business in 45, who I have lived more years in this country than in India. But I've always felt that this is my bridge, connecting me with my host community. I've always seen food as deeply political. It is a tool for conversation. It is a tool to heal communities. And it's not just, bhat dal. It's not just rice and lentil. It's not the actual food that you're eating, but it is the deep philosophy, the spirituality. Food has always been spiritual in our culture, also medicinal. It's about nourishment. We never saw food as a way of showing off. You would not think that someone was so cool because they made something look like an orange that you can eat. It's crazy. In these stainless steel empires, chefs are creating dishes which are all about, impressing.
How they look.
And I want
special effects and nitrogen and all sorts of...
I hate this. And the fact that, if my plate arrives and there's so much, edible flowers and micro herbs, I want to graze on a field, I'll go to the field and eat. I'm not sitting in this restaurant where there's all this vegetation, which I never ordered, and which has cost you a lot, and for which, I'm.
all this vegetation, which I never ordered.
Yeah, but people are doing this. And especially for me, where it's very offensive, where fine dining Indian cuisine is all about making it look very French or look,
Yes, I noticed that
the
too.
segregation.
Plate arranged, individual plate arranged food instead of communal dishes.
And the separation of, so there's a meat, and very much like you would do in a tasting menu in a Michelin star
Yeah.
restaurant, they will pour the gravy on.
Yeah.
And the
It's just not authentic, right?
no, and also there's a lot of, and I know that this is a way of people modernizing Indian food, and I'm glad that they're successful. Good luck to them. I'm not criticizing them, but I am criticizing them because this whole tapa style food, a small 1 inch food in a 4 inch plate with no rice and no roti. I mean, my grandmother's dead would die 25 times again if this is what is being passed off as our food. And why do we need to take the cloak of other cuisines to describe our food? This whole tapa style, where is the tapa style? Show me an Indian family that eats. I mean, there would be a revolt in a
Well,
family.
the sharing aspect of the tapa style is good.
Yes, but not this
but
small
not,
plates.
Not the small plates.
Not the small plates where 1 inch. Who eats a 1 inch piece of food?
But I mean, to be fair, just to push back and inject a little balance, a plate of puchkas. Oh, I do love the puchkas. If you don't know what this is, look it up or go to Asma's restaurant and have it. That could class as a small plate.
Yes,
and it's nice to share.
But we serve it as a starter. That's not your main meal.
No.
And then you've got rice and dal and different kinds of dishes with gravy, some without gravy. But the fact that I think this is to do with the deep insecurity. Indian food is seen as cheap and cheerful. The way that it began in the 60s, a lot of people like to criticize the Saletis who set up Indian restaurants, call them Indian, made food that is unrecognizable, and they made it this generic Indian food.
To cater to what they thought at the time was an English taste.
But they are the people who built an empire with their hard work, their incompetent uncles and stupid nephews. They got their whole families together to cook a cuisine, and I am grateful to what they did. They changed the palate of a nation.
They did.
And a lot of Indian chefs particularly like to talk about, this is not our food. Yeah. Were you there in the 60s when the skinheads were throwing stones to the thing? When people left without paying? When no one was going to lend you a job? No one was going to rent you their house? This community of people set up restaurants just the same as the corner shops were set up by the Gujaratis and the communities that fled Africa when they were expelled. It is extremely important to recognize there is a resilience, there's a deep political power in the way that we serve food in this country.
Absolutely.
This came from a place of great darkness.
Yeah. And I'm sure, as I say, we're about the same age. So we've had a lot of, particularly in the part of your life that's been here in London, we've had a lot of similar experiences. I'm sure. I'm hearing this. I'm sure that cultural attitudes, political attitudes, attitudes to race and migration have been positively changed in past decades by the contribution of those restaurants.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I've always go to speak to, when I'm in the restaurant, I try and speak to all the tables. And when I chat to older, maybe 15, 20 years older than us, talk to older British, families or couples who come, they always talk about their first exotic taste of Indian food and how, their mother would watch Mother Jaffrey and then she would make a version of a curry. And then they tell me they ended the meal by opening a can tinned pineapples. This was seen as a exotic end to a curry meal that was made at home. And I just think it's fascinating. Our first advantage is huge. And I'm trying to now use this to talk about the politics of justice, of equality, because everybody who is of a certain age will remember going into these chintzy curry houses
with the flock wallpaper.
Yeah. And it was just, it is a very big thing that we have. I did an interview yesterday with someone from New York, and she was talking about, how people from America come to England to have Indian food.
Indian food. Yeah, they don't want to eat anything
No,
else.
no,
In
they
fact,
don't.
they're very rude about other forms of
No, and people,
food.
I'm very lucky because they book. So whether it's Paul Rudd or Danny DeVito or someone,
They
and
come into Darjeeling Express.
so but they book in advance, they turn up, and the first thing they will ask me is, where else should I go and eat? And I say, Indian? I know the answer, yes, all Indian. I send them to all over, to go and have Afghan food, Pakistani food, different kinds of Indian food, South Indian food. I have a standard list that I give all of them. They only want to eat Indian food. And this is actually our strength. But we are such a divided, hospitality is divided. But within the kind of South Asian diaspora, people who, are doing food, we are divided.
Yeah.
We are not. If we had a strong leader, and if we would have been able to actually campaign for change, from the visa
yeah.
to the working conditions to insurance, to talking about why women are not hired in restaurants. We are not there in the lobbies of power.
Do you see yourself doing more of that in the months and years to come?
Yes.
More
yes,
of
because
this kind of organisational, industry-wide advocacy, leadership, collaboration.
absolutely, because I think that, I've learned some things. I may not know everything, but I know some things now. And I've also understood that this is unacceptable. Change is very important. I very strongly feel we need to unionize restaurant workers. This is not a popular view. Without collective action, we can never get anywhere. Really evident during COVID, when so many prominent, mainly male chefs, sacked their workforce.
Only to rehire them later.
And then when they couldn't find people, serves you bloody right that you couldn't
And I think
find
there was
staff.
probably some abuse of the government grants that were paid directly to businesses instead of to the workers. I think there was a lot of abuse.
There was a lot of abuse, and my absolutely heartbreaking kind of realization, there were people, sommeliers, head waiters, who were sleeping rough in Trafalgar Square. My entire team, we would make khichdi. Khichdi is a dish of rice and lentils. We would take it late at night because I had Covent Garden. I was at a restaurant. I'd moved to Covent Garden. We would leave that, and they would come and drop it back. I never spoke to any of them. There was so much shame involved. We used to feed them. And I don't know whether I've already said this before to anyone else, but can you imagine? These are the people who served Londoners.
Served them fine wine in fancy restaurants.
And
sleeping rough.
They were sleeping rough because they could not afford the rent, because there was no money. A lot of borders were closed, so it was hard for them to leave. There was a mass exodus, but those who missed that, and then everyone shut down. You couldn't move, this.
I mean, so the hospitality industry has been really, really hit, not just by COVID, but before that by Brexit.
Brexit is the more damaging than COVID. Because what Brexit did is remove not just the top layer, but layers of hospitality workers who came into this country, who were exploited because they came here to speak English. They were the ones who did unpaid overtime. They stayed on to lock because they didn't have a family life. They hung around with their own people. And so they came from Spain, Portugal, France, Italy. They had worked as young kids in their mamas and papas restaurants. They knew how to open a bottle of wine. I'm only a hospitality person will understand that so many people working with us today do not know how to open a bottle of wine. They have no idea how to pour wine. They don't know how to pick up plates, set tables.
Be fair, if you haven't had that in your family background,
Yeah.
you haven't, or you haven't experienced hospitality yourself because of your background, it's very hard to replicate it, to give it. I also think, by the way, Asma, as a regular and happy consumer of other people's hospitality, that it really shows when you go into an establishment how well those workers are treated. because it's very difficult, just because we're human beings, to give great hospitality if you're not being well treated by your employer, because it's just really, it's miserable, isn't it? You're having to be an Oscar-winning actor as well as a hospitality worker, right?
And many of these kids who are now in hospitality are students. Again, this government has been absolutely horrendous in the way that they've changed the laws for students, making it difficult, making them feel unwelcome. But now hospitality is standing on the shoulders of students who are here, who can only work 20 hours a week.
Right.
And they come in, many of them never having experienced any of this kind of hospitality. No one is bothering to train them.
Right.
They just pick them up because everyone is short-staffed.
And but you, of course, again, have led by example, because I know that when you changed premises from Covent Garden back to Carnaby Street, you came back, didn't you?
Yes, I came back.
But there was some spare time on the lease, and you made sure that a Syrian refugee chef was able to use the remainder of your lease.
Yes.
And I know that on Sundays you make your wonderful restaurant and kitchen available to people who are starting out and want to have a pop-up and want to practice. Yeah.
Yes, because I don't even understand why other restaurants don't do it. The day you're closed, you are having to pay rent in any case. I mean, I wish the landlord wouldn't rent us for poor lunches and the days that we're closed. But they do. Why can't you open the door and open your heart and help other people? It's a very selfish industry. It's dog eat dog. Everyone is pulling the ladder away once they reach it. And I have to say, women who have got Michelin stars or powerful female head chefs do interpret success in male terms. Their contribution is nothing. And I've always pointed this out, that when there's been proved allegation of misogyny, racism and abuse by a male chef, the comments from female chefs, zero. The silence is deafening. If anyone Googles, please do, and let me know if you see a single comment from a powerful Michelin star female chef criticizing something that happened in a restaurant. They have picked sides. I'm the only person you will see who writes from everybody. I mean, Marco Pierre White, Heston Blumenthal, of course, Gordon Ramsay, and I've written articles, full-page articles about things when there's been evidence of basically misjudgment, abuse
of power.
And the fact that no females speak up who are powerful.
Well, not
is
everyone's brave, I suppose, or not everyone wants to take the consequences of speaking out. Can I ask you about the distinction between the service tradition and the hospitality tradition? Because I think I have, again, as an external but enthusiastic observer, consumer, noticed those two different traditions, and I think that I much prefer hospitality to service. I mean, this idea that when you go into a restaurant you need to feel like an aristocrat, and the people serving you should be seen and not heard, and and everything should be a little bit formal, and I find that a strange tradition, but it's very perhaps French and a bit British, as opposed to the other hospitality traditions where you're going to an extension of somebody's house.
Yes.
Your restaurant is like your house.
Yes, it is.
And you will be seen walking around the tables and chatting to, and obviously everybody wants to see you because of Netflix and so on. But I see that in your younger colleagues who are bringing food to the tables and taking orders as well. There's a confidence even amongst your younger staff.
Yes, and I'm grateful for that. But you're
it's
absolutely
not the
right.
seen or not heard service tradition is my point.
So I think, without me sounding really cruel to the French, the brigade system set up by the French of everyone barking orders to each other, and this rank that everybody is a certain rank, which is unhelpful. It is divisive.
I can't take your order. I can take your plates away, but I can't take your order for the next
Yeah, and
thing.
this brigade system, I think, is outdated. This kind of very formal service, white tablecloth, silverware. I think now the reason why it's going to go is people can't afford to staff anymore. But if everything
when
will be fine.
times are tough, staffing is very expensive.
And staffing is expensive, and now because of the increase in national insurance
And
contribution.
food now is expensive.
And so when restaurateurs always, I hear them talking about how everything, price of all the food and utilities has gone up. Your staff is doing that through. Your team has to go back and buy food, pay for the electric bill. So you need to pay, and there is absolutely no grounds in London for people to be paying hospitality staff minimum wage. It's the London living wage or it's nothing.
Right.
You cannot, London is different. We pay London living
And
wage.
everyone should get a meal. And do you not think that everyone who works in a restaurant should get a meal on a shift?
Yes.
I'm
And
shocked when I occasionally ask people in places whether they've tried this dish that I'm about to try, and we don't get to eat the food.
yeah,
I tend not to go back to a place like that.
it is horrendous. And for us, also purely from the logistical point, our staff meal is the restaurant food, and so people get to eat the restaurant food, and we it works well for us. Some of the grandmothers, bring Maggi noodles, and everybody fights over that because it's the best thing, Maggi noodles cooked with masala and with some bits and pieces. They come with soups, and they make a lot of random stuff. We all love eating that, but the core food that we have is pretty much is the restaurant food. But I think that era is ending of very stiff service. Also, after COVID, so many of the people who left never came back.
Yeah.
Because when you finally got time away, they didn't come back. I knew this sommelier who I met, randomly on the street, and I said, "What are you doing?" So he started making puppets and doing puppet show on YouTube, his own YouTube channel. And he said, "I love this. I have very little money, but I have no stress." So he makes puppets. But so many people have actually started doing all kinds of different things. I'm seeing this kind of resurgence of supper clubs in
Which is
pop-ups.
how you began, of course.
Yes, pop-ups and supper clubs. So they're not tied to bricks and mortar because landlords have not learnt their lesson.
No.
And this actually...
That's right. Business landlords as well as domestic landlords.
They haven't
want
learned their
something
lesson.
for nothing.
But we have another problem in London. The whole world wants to be in London.
Right.
So when a property is up on the market, you will find somebody from Dubai or from the US, France, Portugal. You're vying with the world.
And people are buying up property not to live there, not to work there, but like gold bullion, right, as an investment.
Yes.
Do you know? I see a lot of that in London, and I think you can really tell in the winter.
Yeah.
When it's dark quite early and you're going along the Thames, or you're in a part of central London that's been redeveloped and there's no lights on.
No, it's
6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening. There's no lights on. There's never any lights on. That has been bought as an investment.
Yeah.
Whilst people are homeless or people don't have business premises to innovate, to try their restaurant, their other small business.
And where I live, and I live in a kind of, it's an inherited house, so it's not that I could have ever had this kind of money. The entire street opposite me, beautiful, huge houses, all empty, all had Russian people living there, and then they've all gone.
So I can tell from so much of what you've said that this yearning for justice and equality is not dissipating anytime soon. And I think you clearly want to do more for the industry and for the community and the communities that the industry serves. And I can picture in the future you taking more of a role in that kind of organisation, and who knows, maybe even in politics. I would love to see that. But you've got a children's book coming, haven't you?
Yes, and I am so happy. When I got the first copy, I wept, because in there is a very personal story as well. Because so many children get picked on because of the food that they eat. And I discovered when I started writing this book, my 25-year-old son was bullied, and he would refuse to take back lunch and refuse to bring his friends to my house, would take the cereal bars, which was in a packet, and he was told, you smell, your mother smells. And the fact that children today in the playground are being made to feel different, and often the food is this thing about smell and aroma, oh my God, you smell. And the child is made to feel different. They are suddenly aware that their parents are different, and then that they don't belong. So I wrote this book where I celebrate how incredibly powerful your heritage is, your culinary heritage. So I start off by talking about how it's the blessings of your ancestors. It's a land where you came from. And the aromas that were in your house, even before you could eat, are telling you who you are. Your food is your superpower. And only when you are ready and you find someone, you can share it with them. That is your secret weapon, that food that you eat. And I talk about some of the spices and the aromas because I know smell is an issue. Kids are picked on because they're told they're smelly. That is so hard for young children. And they're embarrassed and ashamed of who they are. And I hope that parents will read this with their children. It's meant for children between 5 and 8 because I want them to understand if their children are going through this, if there is harassment, the othering of children because of food. Because I use a word which is an Arabic word, which is nafs. It is this vein, and I say that's where your food sits, in your DNA, so close to your skin, connected to your heart. That is your food. Be so proud of it. It is there with you every time, all the time. And this inner power and sense that you are all powerful because your ancestors have blessed you. There's a land that you come from, which you will never see, maybe. But your food is telling you who you are.
What a wonderful project. What a wonderful book. I can't wait to read it. I think it's available now.
Yes.
And Asma, what a wonderful message from the warrior princess that you truly are. Thank you so much for being here in the Speakeasy.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much.